Book 7, Chapter 5, Episode 1. Faye's Strength. Ryoma's side. 2 weeks passed after my rescue of Pedro. Faye and I were on our way to Ganago to meet up with Surgeon to visit the Jamil family, but I wanted to take a detour, so we entered a dark forest. "Sorry for dragging you into this," I said. "Don't sweat it," Faye answered. "Right now I'm your bodyguard. If you want to visit your old house, then I've got no qualms about tagging along. I'm used to treading ground like this anyway." I led the way, but Faye didn't stray far behind. He was quick on his feet and I could tell he was used to walking through nature. That was to be expected from an ex-assassin. "That's good to hear. Were you trained in that?" "Yes, but also my country doesn't have as many paved roads as this one does. Roads make travel easier, but they also help enemy soldiers invade the nation more easily. I posed as a traveling merchant and visited many small villages for that role, and it was always like walking through this forest. Only big cities were different." That reminded me of how I'd never asked about Faye's country before. I heard that it was at war and a dangerous place to be, but nothing more. I hired Faye over half a year ago and never even asked him. But considering his former job, maybe it was sensible that I didn't. "Would you mind if I asked you about yourself, Faye? I'm sure there are things you don't want to talk about. I'll tell you anything you want, as long as you don't go public with it." "You already know I was an assassin." He was so open to the idea that it made me rather uncomfortable. "You don't have to keep any secrets or anything. There's no country to tell me not to share them anymore, so I can tell you. But any important information I have is either no longer useful, or it's been stolen by an opposing army. With that in mind, maybe leaking the information to an enemy of that enemy would help obstruct them. I actually have allies back in my country who want to do that." "Interesting," I said. I would have asked a question, but had no idea where to start. "How much do you know about my country?" "I know it's called the Gilmaresi Empire. That it's a big country located northeast of the Riffle Kingdom, and that it's dangerous because of an ongoing civil war. That's about it. I can add more info to that then." According to Faye, the Gilmaresi Empire was founded long ago by a human with tremendous combat abilities. They united all the villages and the most powerful clans in the north of our continent by force to form a great nation. There was no historical documentation which stated the name or origins of the first emperor, nor anything that would indicate the time of the country's founding, so there were many mysteries. Each of the factions in the Civil War told their own history and claimed that their own leader was descended from the emperor. Evidently, war wasn't the only issue this country had. Back when I lived there, the empire was split into territories governed by the Win family to the south, the Tuan family to the northwest, the Baiguang family to the northeast, and the Shu family in the middle. There were smaller conflicts as well, but the major battles were waged between these four. "Which one are you and Lilin from?" "We worked for the Win family. They had many assassins like us in their service, and divided us into a few different organizations which served different roles. One would stay in enemy territory for long periods of time to steal information, while another would hunt down and kill agents of other families in key cities. We traveled between enemy and friendly territory to investigate and deliver information, and receive information from the other organizations. And if we ever found insurgents in the Win family's territory, we killed them. We had to travel a lot, so my whole organization also worked as traveling merchants to avoid suspicion." I listened with fascination to his story until he seemed to recall something important. "Oh, that's right, boss. I forgot to mention something. During the interview when you hired us, I said that Lilin looks much more like her mother. Do you remember?" "Yes." "Why do you ask?" I lied. "We acted like father and daughter, but we were just assassins in the same squad." "We're not related," he admitted. I couldn't have cared less, but maybe this was important to them. "We've been playing those parts for over a decade, so she's like a real daughter to me. It's hard to fully explain it all. But since you know our background anyway, I thought it might be nice to tell you that." Faye further explained that the Wynn family gathered children whose parents died in the war or abandoned them to have one less mouth to feed into a facility where they were trained to be assassins. Lillian was one of those children. You may think that training children as assassins is beyond reproach, but it was normal in my country. They lived better lives than the children who weren't taken in. Those children couldn't survive at all. Lillian was found to have talent as an assassin, and she was placed under Faye's command. The facility also trained soldiers, civil officials, and more. It gave them only so many options for their future, but it did save the lives of the children. The conversation came to an abrupt stop, but not because of the dark subject matter. Someone's up ahead, Faye said. There were numerous footprints on the ground. They're wearing shoes, so they must be human. Since the footprints weren't washed away by the rain in the morning, I'd guess they came through here less than 12 hours ago. I count 10 to 15 of them. Too many to be hunters. They're bandits, no doubt. What should we do? There's a river a little further ahead. That may be where they're headed. My old home is up ahead in the same direction. That sounds like trouble, Faye said, though he didn't seem the least bit bothered. He said nothing more, leaving the decision to me. One option would be to change direction and head toward the road, I thought aloud. I had planned to spend the night in the cavern house, but avoiding the bandits would require a change of plans. If we did that, the sun would set before we got to the road. And as someone who once lived in this forest, I had another idea. If they're bandits, I'd like to subjugate them. Will you help? Of course. Wait here, boss. I'll go scout the area. They can't be far. I could probably trust this to Faye. He could probably track down someone in secret better than I could. Personally, I couldn't even have guessed that they weren't far away. I wanted to know how he came to that conclusion, but decided to ask him later. Thanks, but don't do anything too risky. You can count on me. Before the words were out of his mouth, he got moving surprisingly quietly. I heard nothing but the sound of the wind against the leaves as he disappeared behind the trees ahead. Faye returned about an hour later. Welcome back, I said, and heard the grass rustle behind me. You knew I was here? I told the metal slimes that form my weapon to inform me when any weapons approach. They eat metal and know when it's nearby. I figured it would be worth asking them, in case any bandits were around. If that's all, then you couldn't have known whether it was me or not. I had to wonder why he snuck up behind me in the first place. If not for my slimes, I would have taken longer to notice. Now I saw firsthand proof that Faye was a pro. Only now did I realize how lucky I was to have him as a guard at my laundromat. So, how was it? I asked. There are 15 of them setting up camp next to a cliff. It's probably the place you mentioned. They were sitting around a campfire discussing their plans for tomorrow, and I happened to overhear them, so I can confirm they're bandits. 4 of them are magicians, 3 are archers, and the rest wield melee weapons like swords and spears. Their equipment is relatively clean and they're well balanced, but none of them are that strong. They do seem to have plenty of experience, however. They seem to have procured information from somewhere, and they even know about the guards for the carriage they're targeting. They have plans for everything from when they attack to when they flee, so if we don't do something, I think the carriage will be in great danger. I see. Can we beat them on our own? If we wait until a bit later, when I can hide in complete darkness, I could take them all out on my own. I've used situations like this to train young recruits in the past. The 2 of us together will be more than enough. It'll be over in no time. We settled on subjugating the bandits. To learn for future reference, I let the pro come up with the strategy. Boss, we'll use this, he said, handing me a pocket watch from the Denomi Magic Item Workshop. They were expensive but convenient, so we ordered one each for all the employees. Mine had a slime etched into it. First, I'll lead the way to a spot where they won't detect us, Faye explained. Then you'll wait 15 minutes before showing yourself to the enemy. If they find you instead, that won't change the next steps. fight if they attack right away, but if you can talk to them, tell them you're a new adventurer who went on a quest to pick some herbs and got lost. I'll use those 15 minutes to try and get to the opposite side, so while you're distracting them, I'll take down the magicians from behind. Assassination is my specialty, after all, combat not so much. We'll make it quick, alright? Understood. If we both wanted to make the most of our skills, it made sense for me to serve as a distraction. I thought about that until the time came for the plan to start. Excuse me. Is anybody there? I asked, stepping out of the darkness. Who's there? One of the bandits shouted. They looked not only toward me but warily checked all around them. They had to be fairly used to this. A kid? What? It's a kid, another bandit said. Nothing out of the ordinary here. I just got lost. What? You an adventurer or something? Yes, I took my first job today. I was all excited to go pick some herbs, but somehow I ended up here. Sounds rough, kid. Hey, come get some rest over here, one bandit said with a chuckle. As I played dumb and approached them, they seemed to let their guard down due to my childlike appearance. But it didn't look like they were planning to give me directions either. They nonchalantly reached for their weapons, but before they could grab them, the 4 bandits furthest in the back suddenly collapsed. It reminded me of when a famous detective would start his deductions in a certain popular anime. One of the men turned to his allies, sealing his fate. I drew my blade and sliced the man's neck in one quick motion. An enemy? Next, I stabbed one's throat, then swept with my blade. I aimed for lethal blows, always targeting whoever was closest. Little shit, one bandit roared and lunged at me with his knife, but I dodged it by a hair's breadth and pierced him through the heart. That was 4 down on my end too. I sensed magical energy and heard Fei chant, Yan. He and a few of the bandits were swallowed up by rising smoke. It wasn't carried by the wind, so it didn't get in my way. This was my first time seeing Fei cast magic. I wasn't familiar with the incantation he used, but this was probably smoke, a poison elemental spell. The caster himself was inside the smoke, however, so it couldn't have been poisonous. I heard cries and shouts from inside the pillar of smoke. Once the men crawling out from the smoke were slain, the forest went quiet less than 30 seconds after the battle began. The smoke cleared up and revealed the men lying on the ground, and Fei holding a bloody straight sword. I could guess what took place behind the smoke. I'm done, boss. Impressive work. But now that I saw his skill, I felt like I wasn't paying him enough. I decided to talk to Karma about raising his income when I got back.